Welcome everyone to the True Passwordless Summit 2021. We're very excited to have you here. This first session is all about the executive order on cybersecurity. It's something that I am far less qualified to talk about than my friend Ed Amoroso here. So, I really wanted to have this opportunity to kind of talk about this first, to level set about, one of the big topics in our space today. It's not every day that we get such an announcement from the top of the top on what we're doing and the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis, how it impacts our industry and our lives. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. A couple of housekeeping items first. We reached out to several of you and about doing some interviews and stuff like that, just on your perspective on cybersecurity, passwordless, whatever you want to talk about really. So Lonnie and a couple of other folks, Lonnie's over there, will be kind of approaching you and just getting interviews with you 5-10 minutes here and there. So if that's something you're comfortable with doing, please do so. We really appreciate it. We're looking to use this as an opportunity to really get some good sound bites and some good collateral for our company that we can use for just communicating to our business and to potential friends and family and maybe even potential customers in the future. So speak about whatever you're comfortable about with regards to. So with that, we'll kick it off on the next slide. So let me see here. How does this thing work? That's like, where is, oh, here. Okay, so my name is Bojan. I'm co-founder, CEO, and CTO of HYPR. If you have not met Mr. Ed Amoroso, please introduce yourself, Ed. I don't think you need much of an introduction, but
well, first of all, I love the title because it implies that there's so much more coming in my life. So that's I'm going to write that from now on. That's exactly the way I would write that. So
you can actually just take a marker and fill it in right here.
No, it's exactly right. The journey ahead is unknown. So I like that.
So Ed, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself just quickly for folks who may not know you.
Well, it's nice to see everybody. Been in cybersecurity a long time. 3 tracks to my life. One is academic, so I teach at NYU. Last semester, I had Jen Easterly's husband in class. How cool is that? That's like having a little bit of a connection to the government, exactly the right kind of connection, right? Give your husband a C. He didn't get a C. So I've been teaching for 32 years, like at Stevens at NYU. And then I worked at AT&T for a very long time. Starting in the mid-90s, the CEO asked if I would figure out how to take the work we were doing with NSA. I was in Bell Labs working with NSA. Could you do that to protect AT&T? And we all went, I don't know. How would you do such a thing? It was like 1993. So we just wired the whole place up with net rangers and nothing worked. And then for the next 20 years, I've tried to figure out how to do that. Andy was in the middle of a lot of that. And got some things right, most of it wrong. But now I'm old enough now that the fact that I got so many things wrong that I can come share with you guys and try not to be this curmudgeon like, well, we tried that didn't work. But really, some things did work, and I can share that with you. And then the third thing is I started Tag Cyber because, is anybody here from the analyst community? Gartner, Forrester, whatever. Well, I used to write them these big, long checks with a lot of zeros on them to get in the upper right quadrant, and I knew that wasn't right. Like, I knew there was something kind of icky about that. So when I retired, I said, I'm going to start an advisory that tries to disrupt that. And the way we disrupt it is they make $3 billion a year and I don't. That's the first thing I did differently. But it's a very different kind of research and advisory. We're now in alpha with Research Portal. We have about 30 customers now that use us as sort of a Gartner replacement. I write a lot of the material. About 30 people we hired my first 3 salespeople. So those are the 3 tracks of my life. I guess the and ... means maybe there's more coming. So thanks for inviting me. And you and I did this one time at FSISAC.
We did.
Standing together, like
Yes.
doing sort of like.
I prefer it.
Yeah. So it's the first time we're doing it here.
It's interesting, and you know, for those of you who are aware, I took on the CEO gig here at HYPR about 4 months ago now, and Ed was one of my first phone calls afterwards. I remember I was at the Javits Center getting my 2nd dose of the vaccine when we had that phone call, and I always really appreciated Ed's perspective and his ability to really zoom out and look at the entire situation and provide really great guidance and advice. And so, you know, I love talking to Ed every time. I feel like every time we have a conversation, I level up as an individual, to use a video game reference. So thank you for being here. I wanted to have this conversation on the executive order, and to kind of guide the conversation, I was trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And so I went on the executive order website, whitehouse.gov, and I copied and pasted the whole thing into one of those word cloud things. And this is what came out. And I wanted this to kind of guide our conversation on the executive order. So these are the words that appear the most within the executive order itself. And you know, obviously, the larger the word, the more it appears. So secure is obviously in the center and largest. But looking at this type of visual, it really kind of helps me put in perspective the way that, you know, the thought process around the executive order itself and what it really prioritizes, right? So, you know, Ed, is there anything in particular that jumps out at you right away?
That looks good. I mean, I'm looking for something to make fun of. Maybe this is a little too big a number, big a word, but yeah, they're good.
Yeah, one of the things that I was actually, you know, not surprised by, not shocked by, but the emphasis on cross agency collaboration in the executive order itself. You know, one of the from my limited work with the public sector, these people don't talk to each other, and very rarely. And one of the big points of emphasis was, hey, when it comes to cybersecurity, everybody needs to get on the same page from a federal perspective, the agencies. What was, you know, from that side of it, what was your biggest takeaway from the executive order in terms of, you know, the cross collaboration that is emphasized?
So let me preface by saying that the people working on this and the people in government are awesome. These are people we all know. It's kind of cool. Like this is maybe the first group where I think we all know them. Everybody knows Ann Newberger. I did ESF with her. We all know Jen Easterly, Chris Inglis. You know, so this is like our group, and it feels great. And these are the finest people I've ever seen as a group doing cybersecurity in government. So, and I'm 100% behind anything they want. I've called all of them, said, anything you want, it's yes. Now that said, I hated the executive order. And I think I may be the only one who's been out saying that I think it's a joke. And I blogged and sent an article to The Atlantic saying, this will have zero impact on anything. We should stop saying that it will. And they wrote back and said, we don't think you should publish this because nobody's going to read it. They don't believe that. And I put it on the internet, and a week later, Jen Easterly calls me up and said, let's talk. So I think, and they told me that nobody else is criticizing it. Like, I'm not sure why everybody thinks that this will have any impact. Let me give you a couple of examples of things that government have tried to explain, and not in some condescending way, but as peers. The first thing they confuse is enthusiasm for sales objectives. When you work in an infrastructure company and you have to talk to CISA, you're told what to say. You sell to them. So when they come and say, we want to talk to you about information sharing, before you have that meeting, the people who sell wireless subscriptions or cloud service or security consulting or whatever it is you sell to them comes and knocks on your door and says, your meeting with them is a sales call, Ed. So here's what you're to say. I used to go to FCC CISRC meetings with a big conditional in front of me. If, Andy knows, these are the weirdest meetings you ever went to in your life. Like they were in an open hearing room, so anybody could come in, including press. One time I saw a guy, I thought it was like Dennis Ritchie. The beard, it looked like, and I go over, I thought, oh, I wonder if he like, where he was. I walk over and I go, hey, what's up? And the guy like growls, and I realize, I swear to God, it was a homeless person who'd wandered in because there's free coffee in Danish. And anybody could come in, and I saw he lifted his shoe, and I saw a bare foot. This is a CISRC meeting, so you had to be careful what you said. So the conditional was, if this topic comes up, you say this. If this topic comes up, you say that. So when people like us, usually, are talking to government, they think that we're giving sincere, but we work for a company. You think you just sit and talk to the government about any damn thing you want? No. So they misunderstand the enthusiasm sometimes we have about things like information sharing. I'll say one thing about that, then I'll turn it back. 1996, I remember helping Dick Clark do PDD 63. That was where we introduced the ISACs, remember? And what did it say? Critical infrastructure, we need to collaborate, we need to share information, we need to get together and work together, and that'll solve the nation's cybersecurity problems. And what happened? Two things. Information sharing did not fix that, and those of you in banking turned it into a business. When we did the FSISAC thing, I get there. And here's how FSISAC considers information sharing. I forget what city it was in, whatever, it's in some hotel somewhere.
Orlando, I think.
Yeah, I show up and there's like an escort there for me. And I said, oh, this is really nice, thank you. And they go, we're gonna escort you. They escort me to the room and they stayed. I'm like, got like an escort, this is amazing. But when it was over, the escort escorted me out because I didn't have a full ticket for the conference. And I wasn't allowed to go to any other meetings unless I paid $5,000 for one day. So all I'm saying is, I was actually impressed by that. I thought, oh, the financial community knows what they're doing. Information sharing is going to be, FSISAC is bigger than ours. It's big, the conference is gigantic. Go for it, that's fine. In telecom, information sharing is, I want Verizon to get hacked. That's the best day of our life. If Verizon gets hacked, we get more business. I'm going to go share with them. I'm going to share with them if you force me, but I don't want to. I want them to get hacked. That's what capitalists do. I'm an American. I remember we were talking about Nick on your board.
Yeah.
After 9/11, little different story. Verizon, AT&T, everybody sharing, a little temporary reprieve. But I'm just saying that government, when they write these executive orders, and I know that thing was to .gov, I get that, but you all know that it's aiming at .gov because they can, but it's a glancing blow at all of us, saying this is the direction we recommend. So information sharing, fining people if they get things wrong, demanding that we sort of kumbaya and thinking that that's going to be right. And one last thing, the hodgepodge of things that are referenced in there, like EDR, but not passwordless, is because Trump hated George and Dmitry. He thought Dmitry was like this guy that flew in from another country to like subvert our America. So the Biden folks very quickly got CrowdStrike, and an EDR is all over the EO. Why that? They could have put 100 other things in there. Now SBOM is in there, which I like, but nobody knows how to do SBOM. And then get everybody to cloud is in there, because everybody said that, but that's not Einstein. So I'm just saying, did anybody, I read every sentence and we put them into assertions and dropped it into GRC tool. I literally read every sentence, assertionize it if that's a verb, and put them all in so I know exactly what's in there. And when I looked at it, I said, if my team had delivered this to me, I just sent them back and said, what the hell is this? That's what I would have said. So that's I'm sorry to be a little bit kind of harsh there, but that's the reality. We need to up our game if we're going to stop cyber attacks. It's not going to be an executive order. It's got to be better than that. We're better than that. And Jen, Chris, Ann, that group, they're also better than that. So when I talk to them, I look them in the face and say, I think you guys are better than this. And then they get a little, and then I get escorted out, and a team from Amazon comes in and says, it's the greatest thing in the world, thank you. It's going to be a collaboration. Oh my God, what a great idea to collaborate, information sharing. Who would have thought, thank you for writing that down, that'll solve everything. That's what you say.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Like, first of all, does this thing have any teeth to it, right? And it's been a few months now, right? And what has actually resulted from it? Like, SBOM is a great idea, right? And ultimately, it should happen.
Alan Friedman moved to CISA, by the way, in case you guys are wondering. I think he's going to be there starting next week.
You know, before I was on the vendor side of the equation, I was on the buy side. And I remember when I took a security job, I was like the first security person at this company. And, you know, I was like, okay, how do I get started? I'm going to take an inventory of everything that we have. And nobody had the inventory, so it was just an exercise for 6 months to talk to different people to figure out what we have. And that was an exercise in itself. And with regards to the SBOM part in particular, most companies don't even know what they have. No. I was speaking with, Tim, I think you mentioned this, where at a bank, they had like 40,000 servers that they didn't know they had, that were just running. And one day they just found them, and said like, oh, we should probably turn these off. So, so from your perspective, how realistic is anything in the actual executive order? And when do you think we can actually expect something to be done in the market based on it, if anything at all?
It won't come from there, but SBOM's a good idea. Like what I did with SBOM, because I think that's a good idea, and I like it. Alan was at NTIA pushing SBOM. That's software bill of materials. That's you're buying software, and you should be able to say what's in it. Like, is anybody in here vegan? I actually am. I mean, I ate some fish yesterday. But if you buy a Twinkie, did you know there's beef fat in a Twinkie? And you only know that because you read it. Alan's, that's his first PowerPoint chart, like at NTI when he says SBOM. So what I did was, any of you guys know Security 50? You know Mike Stango over there? So I called Mike. They have a Procurement 50. And I had a meeting with their Procurement 50 team, and I said, would you guys do us a favor? Just into your contracts, would you write a question saying, hey, software provider, do you do SBOM? I said, just put that in. And they're all like, yeah, we could probably do that. That's not a big deal. And I said, do you realize that'll reverberate? Like if the top 500, they have Procurement 50, but it's like 500 people that are doing this. If all of them start writing that, just that act alone from the private sector, from all of us, will start to move the needle. Because everybody go, what's SBOM? Starts the conversation, well, it's this. Well, geez, our most important buyer is asking about this. Are we doing this? Well, I don't know. Well, maybe we better start doing it. That's the way you get that to go, not with something that's in an EO that everybody's going to get exceptions. You know how the exception thing works? I need 6 months, I need a year, everybody forgets about it. New administration rolls in, they wipe the whole thing clean. It's not a law, it's an EO. So this is not the way to do it. The way to do it, you should go to your own procurement managers and say, when we buy software, would you just please ask? I'm not saying you have to do it. And some of them agreed to do the following. Do you do an SBOM? If no, then we're going to give you a 0 for that category. But if you'd be willing to do something, here's a couple of standards. Here's Cyclone DX, a couple things we like. If you're trying, we'll give you a 1. What does that mean? Nothing. 0, 1, it's just some made up thing. But when you're going through the procurement process, that's a big deal. If, like Bank of America is asking you, this is half your revenue, and they're asking about this, you're going to pay attention. That's how you make SBOM move, not by coding it into an EO.
Yeah, it's about having keystone things that you just do, and that resonates and reverberates through the market, like you said.
I think that's right.
I think about, I think I read this in a book recently where, they were trying to, this company had a major, it was a large business, they had a major communication problem within their business. And, the CEO basically said, we're going to improve our safety at our business. They have aluminum smelting plants all over the world and stuff. And this was in the early 90s. I said, hey, we need to improve communication and safety in our business. And, what we're going to do is if there is an accident anywhere on the planet at one of our plants, I want to know about it in 24 hours. Within 24 hours, I need to know that accident happened, who it happened to and how it happened.
Yeah.
And fast forward a few months, the way that they actually accomplished that was by implementing email at the company. They didn't have email before.
I'll be darned.
So like the CEO didn't even know what email was at that point, really, barely. But ultimately, that's what they implemented in order to meet that objective. So if you go and say, hey, you need to have an SBOM, right? The things that will happen downstream will probably achieve a lot of these things that are discussed in the executive order, right? If you have SBOM, you may have a better incident response system. You may have better software management. You may even accomplish zero trust potentially. And that's something that, I think that at the highest level, you have the ability to kind of set the course. And hopefully the smart people in capitalist America will figure it out and get us there.
Yeah. I think that there's a piece of dogma in government that I'm going to share with you what it is. And let me have it if you don't agree with this. But it's something that I always hear, and I've heard from Chris, Jen, Ann, and everybody else in government. Here's what it is. I'll tell you the dogma. I'll tell you why I disagree and why I think it's dangerous that there's this such religious belief in this misunderstanding. Here's the idea. I'll go on and on like I'm doing now, and they sit there like, oh my God, who invited this guy in here? And then they'll say, but Ed, comma, we've learned in government that if you just do these basic things, that you stop most of the cyber attacks. So why wouldn't we just promote these basic things? Because if we can get everybody information sharing and following these NIST things, and they believe that we really do know how to stop cyber attacks, we just don't want to. And we have to be pushed. But they say, if we can just get everybody to pick better passwords, these 5 or 6 things, then we're good. And my belief is that is such a dangerously held belief because it trivializes everything we do. And it misses this fact. I always have a picture that I show my graduate students. It's this barn where the barn doors are blown open. There's holes in the wall. There's windows out. It's an old beat-up barn, but the barn doors are open. So if any one of us want to go into the barn and we're walking up, if I said, let's climb through that window, there's a ladder there, you'd go, dude, the doors are open. And we go, okay, we'd walk through the door in. And then government folks with their clicker would go, God damn it, 97% of people who go in this barn go through the goddamn door. If we would just close these doors, we'd cut out all these cyber attacks. Missing the fact that I'd go, close the door. Let's just go around. There's a thing in the wall. There's 1,000 holes, but you take the easy one. So they think that if you close the door, that solves it, missing the fact that there's 1,000 other problems, and you're dealing with the Chinese military. If they want to go through there, they can automate that just as easily as going through. But why would they go through the window when they can come through the front door? They completely miss this. And it's even more dangerous because you're going to hear from others, Jim and others, about your boards. When it gets to the board, they get frustrated and think, if you would just do these 8 simple things, and a lot of them used to be shipmen or worked in energy companies where you do safety by following these 10 things, and it really does work in safety. If you ever had a meeting with an energy company, it starts with, okay, does everybody know where the exit doors are? Does everybody know where, even if you're working from home, if you're on the phone with Chevron or Mobil, they're going to ask you, do you know how to get the exit? And you're like, I'm in my home. I don't care. Well, there's the front door. Good, check. Like they do these safety things and they work. None of that crap works in cybersecurity. So government has this crazy belief that we really secretly know how to do this. They feel like we close the door. If they could just sneak in, they'd hear us say, any government people here? Okay, we really know how to stop cyber attacks. Yeah, but we're not going to do that, right? Nah, let's get hacked. This is great. Like I think they really believe that. And that's why they want to fine you, and they want to put incentives and sort of cajole you and push you and make it laws that we do these basic things because we're just too damn stubborn. I'm just giving you the dogma. There's some who would say, yes, we don't believe that, but that's what underlies these things. And that's what, look, the solution here is the talent gap is way too wide. It's like the Industrial Revolution. There was a talent gap then.
Yeah, 3.4 million unfilled cyber jobs or
we
something.
We got the same problem now.
Yeah.
Anybody here coach Little League? You know how when you coach Little League, you have, like on Sandlot, you have 2 or 3 kids that are really good, one that's a superstar. What was that kid, Benny? Remember that kid plays for the Dodgers? Then you have a bunch that are kind of average, and then you have some that are terrible. That's every cybersecurity team in every company I've ever met. Few that are great, some most of them, kind of whatever. They're up against the Russian military. So it's that group against the New York Yankees. And we say, if this ragtag Little League team could just share information with other Little League teams, or could do these basic things, then maybe they can beat the Boston Red Sox. And we would go, no, they can't. Like something has to change. So that's why when I read these things, I always say no 5 times when they say, would you come down to DC and talk? I go, no, I'm too busy. No, come about this thing. Because I know when I get there, I get all like this. And then I get on the train, I call my wife, she goes, you did it again, didn't you? Go, yeah, I did. I couldn't help it. But I'm not there to be a jerk. I'm there because it seems so clear to me that they're getting it wrong. And these are my friends, and these are people I know, and people I socialize with. I had like Jen's husband in class. I mean, I know them. And I wished it was different, but it's not. And my blog basically was, the EO is going to come and go, and it's not going to change the trajectory of the cyber attacks on anything. It's going to have 0 impact. Not that it's bad, but just 0 impact. So if you think it's going to have impact, it won't. It'll have 0 impact.
So on that topic of the cyber shortage of talent.
Yeah, that's a big
If you look at the federal government in particular, you can go online and look at people's salaries, right, for a lot of these positions.
Yeah.
And they make a fraction of what people in private industry make. So a lot of times when I speak with folks in government, like you said, there's a few key people that are exceptional and are truly passionate about improving the security of the nation and everything. And then there's a bunch of people who kind of work at the NSA for a year or 2 so they can get a really good job out in the private sector. And how do you see, what's your perspective on filling the gap at the federal level in particular? because unless we do that, like all of this stuff is
Yeah.
never really going to improve.
So I have a proposal to CISA right now that I'm working with. You guys know Kevin Murphy over at Optiv, and a few other CEOs. We called it Cybercore, and here's the concept. I'll tell you, it's a funny thing about the name. Concept is kids would get 4 years paid university for CS degree in return for 3 years in government or wherever. And I mean like the state government in Montana or some, wherever it's needed, they would go. And we worked the whole thing up. And I think we can raise some money. We're going to eventually look for a CEO. I talked to Jen about it. She's into it. So we're going to create a board, get some rich people like either the Gates Foundation or whoever throw some money. I have the president of NYU and the president of Johns Hopkins who've agreed to be part of the board of governors here. And I said, let's make this like the Peace Corps, where everybody in the room here knows 10 kids that are doing this. And for moms and dads, you get, like if your kid is like, well, I don't know whether to go into computer science or to maybe go into investment banking, you'd go, well, investment banking is going to cost me $75,000 a year tuition. This other thing maybe you get for free. I mean, it'd be like a scholarship program. So we think that's pretty good. And we also, so we have this whole structure laid out where we put executives in place to work with the high schools, work with universities, work with placement, work with career services, the whole thing. So I work the whole thing up and we start to socialize it. First thing that comes back is, this is illegal. The name Cybercore is trademarked. It's illegal for you to even use the name. We're not even going to read the thing. I'm like, well, that's a good first step out of the play. So like going to rename it to like, you know, Project Forward or something like that. But that's what you deal with. And, you know, and again, I grew up in a government family. My dad was 35 years as a research scientist at Fort Monmouth for the Army doing computer science. So I'm not against government. I know what it's like. But that's our solution. We're going to try and make a real program instead of these little baby Cybercore things. It might take 5 years, but when I was pitching it to the CISA folks, I said, which do you think will piss off the Russians and Chinese more? Executive order or Cybercore? And there's silence and everyone went, I get it. So that's what something like that, where we really push a flood of young people who learn computer science, get training in industry, or get training in the federal government, and come out. We think you can do the bachelor's degree in 3 years, 3 years in government, and we'll also do a master's degree online. So your kid would get, after 6 years, bachelor's degree, whatever school they get into, they'd get the scholarship, 3 years service, and we thought, send Boston kids to Mississippi, send kids from Florida up to Brooklyn, send kids from Virginia out to Montana, mix these kids up, like get rid of all this red, blue crap, like do that so they'd have 6 years, bachelor's, master's, 3 years experience, and then at that point go start your career, plus they've helped our country for 3 years, plus they went to a part of the country that they thought was either stuffy or dumb or this or that, and you mix these kids up. So that's what I'm pitching to CISA. Let me know if you want to help. This is not a financial thing. Everybody doing this is doing it gratis. But we will be hiring like a CEO. I'm going to try and find a retired CEO to do it. And then an executive team, probably New York, Washington. I'm either going to get office space at APL or at NYU. One of the two places will give us some places. And we're going to assemble an executive team, start cajoling the universities, put the sponsorships in place. And that's so I'm not just up here like criticizing, being a total jerk. I'm trying to tell the government, this is a thing you can do. And that's a thing we would all go, wow, that's a good idea. Wow, our adversary's not going to like that. It's not going to fix it tomorrow, but in a few years, think about 20,000 kids like working through civilian and state and local agencies. Wouldn't that be good? Like you think they're not going to show up and completely change the whole, and like at APL we're talking about a cyber resource center to help them as they're in those positions. So we'll see. Probably has a 1 in 10 shot that it actually realizes that vision, but I'm going to try, and we'll see what happens.
I think that probably would definitely make more sense than writing a letter and publishing on a website.
That's exactly right.
Ultimately, I just think about my own experience, when I was graduating from my undergrad degree in computer science, I interviewed at the NSA, and I had a job offer from the NSA and a job offer from a software company. And they were very different job offers. And I just, personally for me, I did not see a good reason for me to go in that government direction.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't, it made no financial sense to me at all. But if I had a scholarship, I would have definitely taken advantage of that. For me personally, because I did not grow up, my dad worked in a factory, right? So I did not have for me, paying for college and accomplishing this would have been huge.
Yeah.
And I would have definitely taken advantage of it.
You probably won't get sent to NSA. They've got enough. You'd probably be with the Department of Public Works in North Dakota or something like that.
Well, I was in Kentucky, right? So I probably would have.
You get to pick, but that's kind of the plan.
Yeah, I probably would have been in Frankfort, Kentucky or something. I'd probably still be there. But yeah, it's really fascinating for me. One of the big topics, which I'm sure Forrester loves, right, is this concept of zero trust.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Gartner folks, I don't think I saw Carta mentioned there a single time. Unfortunate for them, but one of the interesting things for me when I was reading the executive order and I was looking at some of these words that pop up most, zero trust is mentioned as many times as authentication.
Top right there, yeah.
So it's mentioned as many times as authentication. And when we think about zero trust, it's this big initiative. You ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers on what it means. But for me, I was kind of surprised by the emphasis of secure access in the entire thing. What is your perspective on just in general the concept of zero trust?
It's a good one. Zero trust is a condition that occurs when the perimeter doesn't work anymore. It's as simple as that. It's not like a product or thing. But I guarantee you that as the Biden team was interviewing industry, government, and everyone else, that when they took notes, they noticed that everyone said zero trust 50 times. So they wrote it down. And Ann's no dummy. She knows zero trust. She's right. If I was right, if I said, hey, you got to write an EO, I'd have zero trust in there. I think that is a good idea. But it comes from people just parroting these phrases that some of them understand fully and some don't. The secure access thing is kind of curious. Like the EDR part is curious. Why did it say EDR? You know why? It's George. So that's all right. He's got every right. They call him in. Hey, we do this. Wow, CrowdStrike said to do this. Do it. And I'm for that. I think EDR is excellent. But there's 100 other controls that are equally important that are not mentioned. They don't mention, I don't know, machine learning based SOAR. I'm making that up. But, they could have. And we'd all have gone, okay, I guess Palo Alto got in there and told me and wrote it down and finds its way into the EO. But zero trust does belong there. That's a good thing. The words are good. I got to tell you one quick story. My dad was a computer scientist. He's still alive. He's retired. And he was a mathematician. And they asked him to head up this project you might remember as Ada. Remember the Ada programming language? Bunch of government folks led by my dad. In fact, I moved my 7th and 8th grade year to Cornell University. I went to school in Ithaca because they were studying programming languages. And they took a hodgepodge of all the best stuff going on in programming languages and wrote up a spec and got a bid from Ishby and these others, and it became the Ada programming language. All the right words in it. Modularity, information hiding, all the beautiful stuff. Getting rid of global variables in your program. That's what Ada was. And it was a gigantic flop. You want to know why? Because my dad was not a coder. He was a mathematician. And the whole team was a bunch of mathematicians. I joined Bell Labs later, but they called over to Peter Neumann and Doug McElroy and Ken Ritchie, or Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson, asked them what they thought, and they said, this thing is a gigantic jalopy. Why don't you just use C? and they went, well, because we need all this stuff. This is the EO is exactly the same thing. A bunch of non-practitioners, well-intentioned people like my dad, putting a hodgepodge of all the right words in this big jalopy and then pushing it out, and then practitioners going, that's kind of not how you do it. You all know that the way you solve cyber attacks is to simplify your infrastructure, period. That's it. Learn what you have, understand what you got, you'll know exactly where the holes are, and you fix them. And it takes a lot of work to do that. Not by
we always talk about,
simplify.
Improving security is really making it more economically difficult for the adversary.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as perfect security. We all know that. But how do you make it so that your infrastructure is economically more expensive to attack than the other guy?
That's right.
And ultimately, if you can do that over and over and over, and you make that the point of your program, it becomes a mature program. And that's how you accomplish things like zero trust and all that stuff. So
I think that's right. So
awesome. Well, so we want to open it up to the floor. Does anybody have any comments, questions about this entire thing? Jim? Oh. Sir.
Got a question for Ed, and it's not necessarily challenging what you're saying, but maybe a little bit, in that we spent 4 years with an administration that dismantled cybersecurity leadership in the public sector. And this was a statement that that's changed, and we're actually accumulating talent, cybersecurity talent, in the federal sector.
yeah.
And that was, this was kind of a way to wave that flag and send that message out. From my perspective, that's a positive change from where we were. It's going to, it took 4 years to dismantle a lot of our capabilities. It's going to take 4 years to put those capabilities back together. But from my perspective, that was a positive outcome from this communication. Now, I'm a bit cynical, maybe, as you are, which is I don't have high expectations for an executive order, but this was clearly a change in direction that you yourself acknowledged is positive in terms of the results of cybersecurity leadership. What do you think?
I was at a party with neighbors, and all the kids running around. And one of the kids are all running around outside. One of the kids hurt his leg pretty bad. Turned out it was a hairline fracture. The kid's laying there. And my friend Jeff, was his house, he starts going frantic. And we're all like, relax. We actually had to call an ambulance to come. He comes running out, and he had a stethoscope. And we said, dude, what are you doing? And he's like at the stethoscope, and he looked up at me, and he goes, Ed, we can't just sit here. We've got to do something. And I was like, well, I appreciate the sentiment, but a stethoscope? The kid hurt his leg. The Biden administration was told, we have to do something, and we got to do it fast. Do it. So they call everybody up. They do a word salad of what they hear. They put it in order. They push it out, and they said, we did something. I would rather they did nothing. And take the time. When Rob Joyce was there under Trump, so I call Rob up and I go, dude, how can I help you? And blah, blah. He goes, well, I'm trying to explain to NSC and others. I said, I tell you what, I'll write a blog for you. We'll call it From Rob's Desk. I'll ghost it. You push it out. He goes, great idea. So I had to call all the lawyers at AT&T. It was a big process. So I write the first 5. He goes, let me go through it. And then all of a sudden I notice he's not writing back to me. He's not writing back. I drop a note to Bossert. He's not writing back. And then I'm making my coffee. I see they both got fired. So it's like, I can see when all this trouble with it. So again, I don't just poke at these guys and not try to help. I really try to help. But what they should have done is something a little simpler and more thoughtful. What I said to them when they asked me that question, well, you Mr. Know-it-all, we had to do something, what would you have done? And I said in my snarky way, I said, you should have told everybody to go help their sixth grader with her calculus, or well, it should be calculus, but sixth grader with her math homework. And then there's silence like, well, we get the point. And I said, no, I'm dead serious. If you want to solve the cybersecurity problem, it's an education issue for kids, high school, college. We need to get more smart people doing this. That's what that should have been the executive order, not this. And then they go, thank you very much. And then I leave and they go, what the hell was that? Because that's not what they hear from anybody else. Everybody else goes, oh, thank God those Trump losers are gone. Now we have a real team here. And I got to tell you, Bossert and Joyce, if you guys know them, they're pretty smart. You know, even like, you know, their DISA, I think, was under pretty good hands there for a little while as well, right? So, CISA, with Chris. So I don't know, Jim. I mean, I get that I preface by saying these are fine people that are there. They totally got an all-star team. But I think our all-star basketball team lost in the first round, too. And any NBA team would have won without all-star teams. Just pick any random NBA team they've won. You put an all-star team, they may not win. So it's going to take a little time, but I would rather they go slower. Instead of doing 10 things, do one thing, do it right, be more humble, and recognize that you're in the background now. This isn't World War II where the government fights the war. You guys are fighting the war. Government needs to be in the back, supplying people, supplying resources, supplying funding, supplying guidance, supplying all kinds of help, not we'll come in and solve it. This is not World War II. So it's a kind of a harsh message, but like my friend Jeff, we need to do something. No, you don't. Just relax. You know,
Just wait for the ambulance.
Stethoscope's not going to help here. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, Joe.
I was very impressed with
Hold
your
on,
presentation. A lot of common sense that you bring to market. One thing about zero trust, right? You have zero trust. Who do you trust, though? Is there, would the government think about some certification process for the industry, for private sector folks to say, okay, trust these people?
Well, you're asking two things. So a zero trust is about minimizing the requirements for trust, meaning at the session level, I just need a device to get to cloud safely. And I'm not going to have a perimeter. I'm not going to have anything around. There might be inside, all kinds of, I just need to minimize that so that I can make a safe transaction and then tear it down. Just like in cryptography, we try to minimize the time that you rely on keys. You're minimizing. That's zero trust. Now, your question about certifying and trusting sort of entities and people, totally different situation. That's where SBOM comes in. Like, that's where having a more open book about what it is you provide and do, it's a pretty good idea, like having a little more transparency in where things come from. You guys all know Sudhakar over at SolarWinds, right? I think he's done a good job since he started over there because he walked into a mess. And now I think he's kind of leading the pack in let's be more transparent about the way we work, and people will trust us more, because he was walking into a situation where people are like, man, don't use them. I thought that was unfair, because you all know that could have been any IT management company. It just happened to be them. And when I see, like, you know, ServiceNow or somebody go, oh, look, they got, you got, I say, listen, man, keep your mouth quiet, because that could be you. So best to not. Just open up, be more transparent. That's the way you become more trusted. Transparency equals trust. But zero trust as a concept is a computing idea. It's this session that when I want to look at my paycheck stub, I don't want to get on my laptop, get on Wi-Fi, negotiate VPN, authenticate to Active Directory. We're going to hear about the evils of Active Directory later. And then you go on the LAN and you find the app, and then I log in and I give a password, and she hates, and then I just read my paycheck stub. Versus, I take my iPhone out, I hit a button, and my paycheck stub pops up. Like, B is better than A. And zero trust is a concept that allows me potentially to do B more securely than A. Like instead of all this weaving and hairpinning and crap. So that's why that's a good thing. It's simpler, people like it. That's zero trust, but trusting organizations is more about transparency. Does that make sense, Steve?
It does, and with regards to the transparency angle, I'm trying to picture a world where I can go to any software company's website and just go to a publicly available link and see all of the software that they use. Like, do you think that?
I don't see why you shouldn't be able to do that.
Like that
That's
would be
Cyclone DX. That's the idea.
That would be refreshing to me personally, and I think we could also use it as an opportunity to address issues faster as they come up. Right? The only way that you can react to a system-wide problem is if you have the visibility.
Yeah.
And right now, I feel like we have zero visibility.
Yeah, I would agree. Good question.
So can I just ask you a question on that topic?
Yeah.
You would feel comfortable publishing that, right? Knowing the potential ramifications of, oh, we now know you use XYZ Python library, which is now vulnerable, right? So and I love the idea, I love the concept, but I worry that there are going to be too many people going,
Yeah, ultimately, I think that if you're a hacker, this type of information is pretty trivial to find out anyway.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So it's the, how much do you rely on the obscurity side of it, right? Unfortunately, a lot of companies still do rely on obscurity to protect themselves. But ultimately, I think that having that visible and enables people within your organization to address it faster, because they may not know all the stuff that you're using, right? And just having that list would put everybody in the company in a position where they feel like they can do something to help or improve it. And I think that that benefit is greater than the potential risk of we have a Python library that's vulnerable that has a CVE, and hackers might find it. That's just my personal perspective.
You were a pioneer in cloud, no question about it. You had the guts to do it when a lot of people weren't. And a lot of people probably were saying, man, John's going out to cloud, that's going to be this and that. And you were right. So I think SBOM's going to be the same thing. There'll be a lot of people going, saying what you said. And I know you're asking it because that is a topic that people bring up all the time. I hear that all the time. Oh my gosh, don't let them know what we're using.
So, like with the SolarWinds breach,
Yeah.
I have 10 different operations who are using it. We were using versions that were so old they weren't susceptible
Yeah.
to being hacked, right?
Yeah.
And part of my IT team was like, look at
No,
this.
I know. That is such a bad lesson to learn. I know what you mean.
I'm never patching again.
Right, but that's the battle. Never patching again. If we just stay way behind the curve, we'll be okay. But from a vendor perspective,
Instead of N-1, you're N-30. Yeah.
From a vendor perspective, again, I think it's incredibly refreshing that you as a vendor would be willing to put yourself out there. I just think the SolarWinds, the IBMs, all
Yeah.
these companies in the world are just going to struggle with that level of transparency.
They will struggle. There's no question. SBOM is not a walk in the park. What we did is we proposed, worked on this with Alan, a maturity model where you get a 0 if you say, I don't even know how to spell it. What was that thing you said? And there's also DBOM, that device bill of materials where you get this medical device and there's a list of all the crap that's in it. Seems like you'd want that. But we said you get a 0 if you don't even know what it is. You get a 1 if you're trying to do something where you say, look, I can't give you perfect, but I'm happy to give you the major components that are here, especially open source. And then you get like a 2 if you actually follow a standard. And we thought, just build a simple maturity model. That's another thing I told the procurement managers. Just say, are you a 0, 1, or 2? Just, are you doing SBOM? No? Okay, 0. Are you trying? And you'll give us something? Okay, we'll give you a 1. Did you follow a standard? We'll give you a 2. And then you'll have everyone writing back, all the suppliers writing back going, well, which standards am I supposed to look at? Then you list them. And again, with Alan Friedman leaving NTIA going to CISA to do SBOM at CISA, that's a good thing. He'll have a lot more power there, but we were talking on the phone the other day, and he's like, yeah, more power, and we both started laughing, and we went, yeah, but a lot more bureaucracy to do stuff. At NTIA, you don't even know what that is, right? So he could do all this stuff without anybody noticing. Now he's in the spotlight, and SBOM will be more highlighted. But I think for all of you guys, if you buy into it, then speak up. You know, I mean, in your community, it seems silly that Twinkies can tell you what's in there, but software that I'm using, like I run the board subcommittee for PSEG in New York City, power company. We don't know what the hell is in the software running these power plants. I have no idea. And when I go, maybe we should check. You know, it's a lot of what you said. It's like, look, dude, this stuff has been there for 20 years, and it's always a guy with a windbreaker, you know, with a hard hat, knows where everything is, tough dude, spits on the floor, Jersey guy. That's PSEG. And they go, I know what's going on here. And you're thinking, well, I'm all for that. You should know. But there's this new thing called computers, you know, that maybe you want to check and see what's in there. So these worlds are colliding a little bit, and security through obscurity usually, that usually is a bad place to go. So I love the old stuff doesn't get hit. That's true.
I'm going to be the voice of disagreement.
Andy, you're allowed. You've earned the right.
Ed and I are the two NetRanger guys. Like we're both, probably the original people, or only people who use NetRanger. But I'm actually completely not on the SBOM bandwagon. I think it's an awful and horrible idea.
Yeah.
I actually think inside a company you should be able to produce an SBOM.
That's a good point.
Like inside a company you should know what your software is so that you know what to go fix.
How about if you sign something saying we know, but I'm not going to tell you?
I'm fine with that.
Then that's okay.
I'm opposed to the publication
And
of the
everybody's just
data.
going to sign it.
But I'm saying, like in the maturity model, if you said, we follow a standard, and I had, you know, Joe Schmo come in and look, and they reviewed it. That's how
And
audit
I know
works.
it's in my
I'm okay
software
with
and I
that.
maintain
no,
it.
I didn't mention that here, but I like that. I think that's fine.
Having been the first COTS platform to go through FedRAMP, so we took our commercial platform through FedRAMP and had to basically do SBOM for the government. It was an epic disaster.
So which part of the whole CDN?
Yeah, the whole CDN
everything?
was FedRAMP compliant. Like we were the sixth
to take that
entity
big thing
to be
through.
FedRAMP compliant. It was the entire CDN.
Wow.
And the amount of trivial nitpicking because they didn't like choices we had made. It wasn't about security. It became about, why did you use this library and not this library? And the amount of energy we put in there, and I see the same thing I saw it in my customers, where people would, anything that they would learn, they wanted to argue. Like, why do you use OpenSSL and not S2N?
No.
Like,
But dude, if you're saying inside the company you should do it, and it's okay to check a box saying we had a guy, 100% agree with that. The government doesn't, and you know what? If you looked at companies that do this stuff, like Finite State, and there's companies, you look and they show you you can't understand what's in there.
You can't
it's
understand
1,000 libraries and you don't know what that is.
And I
so
worry,
I am totally in agreement with that.
And I worry that the incentive of having that list out there, let's say they created this list of every library in use everywhere in my company, which first of all will include a lot of outdated crap because all of my dev systems and test systems and things we aren't doing are going to be weird. But the incentive will actually go on to my developers to stop using open source in a transparent way.
Would you blog what you said?
Sure.
Though? Just if you could blog, that would be big coming from you. If you said, look, this SBOM train, here's some tracks I'm not on, but I think a company should know. And if you bring an expert in who says, I looked and it looks reasonable, If you blog that, that's a big deal coming from you.
I'm good with that.
I'm going to watch for that
See,
blog.
here I was trying to be a disagreement and confrontational. and
No,
you just took
you're
that away.
saying the right thing. It's good. No, I agree. I think that's arguably better.
Yeah.
It's arguable because that's the discomfort I've had. I've sat through the demos and I'm sitting there thinking, should I know what all this stuff is? Like 18 layers of AIX security control. And I'm going, what is all this stuff? It's like from another planet. I don't know what this is. I don't know this. So that's silly. But an expert will take the time and say, I looked at it. That is arguably better. So
I've been in situations as a vendor
that make
where,
sense to you?
yeah, I've been in
Yeah.
situations as a vendor where we use a particular open source library, and we had a customer come in and say, we're not using your product because you use that library. And I'm like, why? There's no issues with it. There's no known vulnerabilities. It's widely used in the industry. And then I looked the guy up that's really pushing back on it. And he is a contributor to another similar library that's open source
Yeah.
that he feels is just better in general. And that could that one piece of information could derail an organization from making a
Yeah.
significant improvement in their security posture just because that one person feels like an open source library is better than the other.
Yeah.
Try selling a Linux-based CDN to Microsoft.
If you take like the yogurt containers over there and you look on the back and see what's in there, the first 2-3 things you'll get, but the last 3 or 4 will be some chemistry thing. They don't know what the hell that is. But an expert would say, hey, did you know that thing, is going to have the following? And you go, oh my God, really? So I think experts should be in the equation where it says SBOM over there. And it said SBOM small up on the top. It's teeny because they only mention a couple of sentences. But if we add to that a whole infrastructure, then every consultant, every consulting agency, every system integrator will be going, that's the way to go, because then they can sell those services. And you'll get all of them on board.
Right.
So that would be
Demonstrate
good.
that you have a process for
Auditors will
identifying
love
your
it.
software, and then that ties right into your vulnerability
Everybody
management
will
and
like
your asset
that.
management.
Everybody will like that. I think that's a good way to do it. And then you could even have a lower grade of a self-attestation where the development team says, we know what's in here and we'll sign our name to the fact that we have confidence that we put goods. For me, I buy from that group versus one that doesn't do that. That's the whole idea. So.
It's just like a SOC 1 and SOC 2. You have
Yep.
Yeah.
third-party auditors.
Why not? Yeah, it seems fine to me.
I think we're
That's a good
we're
way.
at time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good,
All right.
good.
Well, thank you, Ed.
Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you all.